Okay, so here's like, how the world began, billions of years ago. No, I mean like millions. Wait, was it thousands? Who cares? Anyway, in the beginning, some people think the earth was made with like this big bang. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. The Bible says like, God just said it, and it happened. So I guess it was more like the big mouth. Can you imagine making something happen just by talking? I'm like, that is so cool. I could do like so much every day. I wonder if that would work on housework and stuff. I'm all like, let my room be clean. Let the dishes be put away. Reality check. Anyway, God made the world. It took, like maybe a week. And then God was all, this is so tight. I'm taking a day off. So then there was that whole deal with like Adam and Eve and the apple and that slimy thing. And God is all, thou sinnest. Thou art banished from the garden. And Eve must have been all, whatever. I'm going shopping for some clothes. I don't have a thing to wear. Well, I don't know, but that's what I would have been like. So then Adam and Eve, they had a bunch of rugrats, and their rugrats had rugrats, and, well, Anyway, it got to where there was a whole bunch of people on the earth, and they were like all screwed up, except for this one guy, Noah. He thought God was like totally tight, even if he did make Noah build this humongous boat in the middle of nowhere. But everybody else was all, duh, God who? And God's like, I don't think so. And then it rained and rained big time, and yada yada yada, and everybody like dies except for Noah and his family, and all the fuzzy little animals. But I've always wondered, was Noah even thinking when he let spiders and snakes and stuff on the boat? That was so lame. Anyway, then Noah's family did the complete rugrat thing again, and yada yada yada. Then Abraham was born. He was like this complete dude who lived near Kuwait. But I think it was like before that Saddam guy was around and had that nasty golf tournament. The Gulf War. Anyway, so God was all thinking Abraham was like to die for. So God told Abe to move to Israel. But it wasn't Israel yet. It's just all dirt and grass and mountains and stuff. And God told Abe that all this land was his forever and ever, and made him promise to do that whole rugrat thing all over again. So, yada yada yada, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. So this is like 2000 BC, and that's about when they built Stonehenge in England. You know that big pile of rocks that everybody gets all hyper about? I mean, what's the big deal? My little brother could do that. Anyway, that's so totally besides the point. Where was I? Oh yeah, Joseph. So Joseph's brothers think Joseph's a total dork and sell him to a slave in Egypt. I wonder if you can still do that today. Anyways, eventually, everybody in the whole world runs out of food, and Joseph has it all. He became the Ronald McDonald of Egypt. So his whole family figures he's not such a total dork after all, and they move in with him. And of course the whole rugrat thing happens again, and yada yada yada. Now there's 1 million or 2 Jews in Egypt. And did you know the pyramids had been built 1,000 years before they even got there? And what was that all about, those pyramids? What is the point? I mean, did they have a life or what? Anyway, Joseph's family, the Jews, somehow they all wound up being slaves in Egypt until this guy Moses comes along and goes, I don't think so, to Pharaoh Fawcett, who was the major dude in Egypt. I think he was bald. Anyway, Pharaoh got on the bad side of Moses, who was the big movie star, special effects guy. So it turned out bad for this Egyptian dude, completely. So the Jews left Egypt and went through the Red Sea staying like totally dry. I so don't know how they did that. I think God had something to do with it. What's his deal? I mean, first he floods them, then he keeps them dry. Whatever. But then they all go, duh, God who? And hang out in the desert for like 40 years. Can you imagine what that would do to your complexion? So eventually they wind up back in Israel, the land that God promised to Abraham, except there's like other people now. So this guy Joshua, who's like the Schwarzkopf of the Jews, kicks some serious behind and goes, Lieber will kill you and your little dog, Toto, too. And I guess God is like on their side because the Jews win big time. And they all go, yeah, God! And get back to that whole Rugrat thing again. So now we're at about 1400 BC. So I'm going to skip 400 years here. Because, like, nothing happened. I mean, King Tut died in Egypt and wrote that cool song. And Samson was like the Clint Eastwood of Israel. He's like, go ahead and make my day. And he had this awesome hair. And then, like, that whole Trojan horse thing happens. And some Chinese guy invents multiplication and geometry. And I'm like, thank you very much, Major Dork. Get a life. But then in about 1000 BC, this big dude Goliath goes, you Jews are a bunch of wimps. And this little Jewish sheep guy goes, are not. And Goliath goes, are too. And David, he's the sheep guy, goes, are not. And pulls out his slingshot and, like, bam, hits the big ugly dude right between the eyes. And David goes, my God's bigger than your God. Nana, nana, boo, boo. And before you know it, this little sheep guy is king of Israel, which is like all the land God promised to that dead guy Abe, and all his rugrats forever and ever. So David was like this way cool king, except for this one deal with a lady who took a bath on the roof. What was she thinking? I mean, do you really think people aren't going to look? Anyway, David was like a colossal dork and like had her husband killed. What was he even thinking? Anyway, God forgives them. And they have some rugrats, and one of them named Solomon becomes king when David croaks. Solomon was like this completely smart dude and built this like totally awesome church. But they called it a temple back then. And Solomon had like hundreds of wives. Can you imagine what his MasterCard bill was like? Anyway, when he died, his sons messed up everything. And Israel divided in half. So now we've got like Israel in the north and Judah in the south. One of them is bad and the other is worse. I don't remember which is which. Meanwhile, in the rest of the world, the Chinese figured out astronomy, which is so better than geometry. And Homer writes the Odyssey, which is, I guess, what he did before The Simpsons. And they start skating in Europe, which is awesome because you get to wear those cool outfits. Except for Tanya Harding, who's like the mother of all dorks. Oh, that reminds me. First Olympics were held in Greece in 776 BC. And did you know that in the Olympics back then, they didn't wear outfits at all, if you know what I mean? How weird. I guess that's why they hang the medals around your neck instead of pinning them to your shirt. So anyway, back to the Jews, who were divided between like Israel and Judah. Eventually they were both all, duh, God who? And God's all like, I don't think so. And they both got kicked out of the land God promised Abe and his rugrats forever and ever. When they were getting booted out, this guy Isaiah was like a prophet who told the Jews that God was going to be mad at them for a while, but that things would eventually chill and God would send them a new major leader called the Messiah who would like really solve all their problems forever. And the Jews are all, I can handle that. But the hard part was that they had to wait and wait and wait. Anyway, while they were waiting, there was this cool guy Daniel who was like a Jewish lion tamer or something in Babylon. I guess they called it that because the people would just babble on and on about stuff. Don't you hate it when people do that? Then this old fat guy Buddha becomes the major dude in Israel, India. Aesop becomes like the Mr. Rogers of ancient Greece. And Confucius makes fortune cookies in China. I'm not sure, but I think he makes up stuff to put on little pieces of paper in the cookies to make them sell better. Because, you know, I don't think they taste that good anyway. So back to the Jews. A bunch of them come back to Jerusalem in about 450 BC. They're like building a new temple and a big wall. They hang out waiting and waiting for this Messiah guy. I mean, what is his problem? They've been waiting for like 300 years. No joke. While they're waiting, Greece decides it's really hot stuff. You know, those guys, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. I so love that clay stuff he invented. Especially how you can make really cool animals. I can make a totally radical snake. And then there was this one Greek soldier dude, Alexander, who thought he was so cool he called himself Alexander the Great. I would have been all, "Excuse me, can you move over? I can't see because your big head's in the way." Anyway, the Greeks get a little cocky, and before you know it, this Roman guy named Julius Caesar takes over and gets appointed emperor for life, god of everything, maker of all salads. I mean, can you believe it? He's all, "Bow down and worship me, you mortal people." Get real. Anyway, some of his buds are all, "I don't think so," and go "Mr. Caesar, meet Mr. Life." Nice. But Rome was still ruling the world like a big dog. And they're the biggest world power ever. I mean, practically the whole world was ruled by Rome. And they're all speaking the same language and paying taxes big time. These Roman guys with their little short skirts weren't even Israel, which God promised to that Jewish guy Abe and his Rugrats forever and ever. Of course, the Jews are totally ticked at the Romans for making their life miserable. And they're wondering about God, because that Messiah dude hasn't showed. And it's been over 700 years since Isaiah said he was going to come. So the Jews are totally hoping the Messiah will come and be all, "I don't think so," the Romans. Then the Jews will be completely the big dogs for a while. So Mark Antony and Cleopatra do their little thing. Isn't that romantic? Except they lose, commit suicide, and Rome conquers Egypt. And then the Romans make Herod the Great. What is this with the great thing? King of Judea, which is what they started calling Israel. And then a Jewish girl named Mary gets engaged to Joseph, and they have a baby boy in a barn on Christmas Eve. Wouldn't you hate having a birthday on Christmas? That would be so not fun. I mean, a rip-off, big time. You know you're only getting half as many presents. Anyway, it's the birth of Christ, and that's it.